Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to the channel. Today, I am going to be trying out this stuff. It's called watercolor ground. Apparently, you paint it on anything you want and it becomes like a watercolor paper type of feel. So I thought that sounds pretty dope. Why don't we try it on an old skateboard of mine? It's pretty banged up and it's a perfect candidate for the job. So I think we'll just sand it up, slather in that stuff, and then do ourselves a nice watercolor painting. Something weird and creepy. So how's that sound? All right, let's do it. So right here, I'm just applying the paint stripper. It's called Citri Strip, and it's a lot easier to use than the other stripper I bought. Last time I had to literally put my house for sale because I couldn't go back in. It was so stinky. But this stuff is pretty good. Bought some nitro gloves to protect my hands and that respirator I got at Home Depot. Laid down some plastic, that way I wouldn't make a mess. And then once the stripper sits for about an hour, you can scrape it off with a paint scraper. We are all done stripping the board, scraped off all the paint, and I did a little light sanding here and there. Off camera, I went ahead and put painter's tape all around. It's going to give it kind of a nice clean edge for when we prime it. Speaking of priming, like I said before, we're going to be using this here watercolor ground. It's gonna make the whole surface act as a watercolor surface. So let's get on to that. All right, here we go. We got the ground. Let's open her up. Let's get some kind of stirring stick. All right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Nice and thick. All right. Let's just dip it in there. There we go. Ground is definitely thicker than you'd think it would be, and it's got kind of a gritty texture feel to it, but applying it's easy enough. It's basically like throwing down any base coat of white paint. I didn't put anything in the screw holes because I figured I'd just pop them out once it was all dry. All right. It's been about 48 hours. I let it dry the whole weekend. And as you can see, that's kind of what it looks like. I went ahead and did a second coat off camera. But the first coat, I put it on like this, sideways stroke. And then the second coat, I went up and down stroke. That way you can kind of see, it kind of gave it like a fabric hashing, like canvas. So hopefully, once I sand this nice and smooth, it'll kind of have a nice texture to it, like paper or canvas. So let's get to sanding it. Now that we're all done with that stuff, we'll move on to the fun part, the art part. Fun to say, right? Okay, so off camera, I got a pencil and sketched out this creepy boy. Gave him a nice little smile, cool cat ears. He's ready to go. So what we're going to do is we'll start with inking in black and then move on to the watercolor. So getting started here on the line art, I busted out my POSCA 1.3 black acrylic marker. One of my favorites. My ultimate favorite is the 0.7 millimeter super fine tip. I use that on a lot of my smaller pieces, but since this was a bigger piece on, a full skateboard, I had to break out the boulder lined pen. For the design on this one, I wanted to do kind of a happier, smiley design, so I went with one of my favorite animals, a cat, and I put a big, huge smile on his face. I wanted it to be more of a bold black and white type of character and try and cut back on some of the face blood that I usually use. It's kind of reminiscent of my older pop art horror style. Some of you might have remembered like my Hollow Eyes original logo or the Creepycorn logo that I currently use on Instagram right now. A lot of people ask me if I like to do the fine lines, the black lining first, and then do backgrounds second, or if I paint the background first and then do the fine black lining. And I honestly gotta say it's a little bit of both. Kind of just depends on the whole vibe of the painting. If I'm thinking about like a really dark painting or really blood red background, I might paint the background first, just throw down some black paint, watercolor, red, whatever it be. But sometimes when you work out a really nice sketch with really fine details, you just want to line that sucker in as is. Then you kind of work out the background as you work through the journey of creating the painting. So honestly, it's a little bit of both. I put in lines on his arms. I felt like it was too distracting, so I ended up just blocking it all in black so that it would draw more attention to his face and his rib cage and creepy long fingers. That's always a good vibe. If you've been following me any length of time, you'll know that I love to draw a lot of teeth, a lot of big creepy smiles. So clearly I threw that in this design. I put as many as humanly possible. I think his teeth turned out pretty good. So, why skateboard? I got into skateboarding way back when. In, I think, junior high or freshman high school. But I remember I was in summer school because I wasn't exactly the best student. Didn't really pass a lot of classes at the time. There was always something funner to be doing. But I remember becoming friends with a couple skaters, and I really loved the culture, the music, the vibes. And so that's kind of when I got into skateboarding. Got my first board, which I believe was an Element. It had kind of like a bunch of pine trees on it. Growing up where I grew up, it was very religious. So skateboarding was a great way to rebel against the norm. I went to a lot of rock shows, skateboarded to high school, and went to skate parks with my friends. The one thing I always loved was the board designs. As an artist and a skater, I really loved and embraced all the different artworks and designs that went into all of the skateboards and all the companies, and I honestly wanted hundreds of skateboards just because of the designs. I mean, more skateboards than I could ever ride, but I just wanted to collect them all. So, you know, later on in life, when I started to take art more seriously, it was always something that I really wanted to do, was to design a skateboard, to come up with a whole handful of really cool, creepy things that, you know, people might want to see on boards. People would be like, oh, that's sick, bro, like I want that skateboard, and, you know, show it off at the skate park and stuff. So, you know, that's kind of why I picked the skateboard. I thought it'd be fun, a good blending between things I'm interested in, and it worked out well. For supplies, I use a whole lot of everything. I'll use ink, acrylic high flow paint, watercolor, and even gouache. I typically just generalize the term watercolor because the technique I like to use with all of those supplies is a watercolor technique. So it's kind of a generalized term because a lot of people have heard of watercolor. On this particular design, I was using water-based ink and some high flow acrylic. For brushes, I use a variety of different kinds. If I'm doing fine lines or watercolor, super detailed stuff, I'll use round paint brushes, very small sizes usually. And I typically like those daily ones to be like plastic handled. I don't really like wooden handle paintbrushes because, sad to say it, I oftentimes will leave them sitting in a cup of water overnight or a week, and if it's wood, it'll split and get ruined, and if it's metal and plastic, you can accidentally leave it there for a while and it won't mess them up. If I'm doing a huge area and need a lot of paint, I honestly just buy whatever large crappy brushes you can find at Michael's or on Amazon. There's been a couple times where I Bob Ross it up and I use a knife to paint lines or scratch things into my paintings. But I can safely say I've never used the fan style brush, so RIP, but maybe I'll have to give it a try one time. As far as putting varnish on, I like to get a really soft brush. They have a brand called Purdy at Home Depot, and I've been liking their brushes. I think I have a 4-inch extra large, and it does really good with putting the varnish on cleanly and not leaving any streaks or bristle lines. This part, painting blood, one of my favorite things to paint. And it doesn't always have to be blood, but I do like to just draw any type of, or paint any type of liquid, goo, blood, slime, anything like that. I find the fluidity of it fun. It's a little bit of controlled chaos. On this part, like, I start at the top and I just sort of let the ink and acrylic paint just drip down to wherever it wants to be. And then I come in later and sort of detail in some fine drips and things where I feel like I could fill it in. The texture was so good, I was able to use some of my finer pens and just draw on it like it was paper, which was really cool. This pen I'm using right here is a Pentel Hybrid Technica. which is, I don't want to say it's my favorite because I have a lot of pens, but it is up there and I've been using it for a while. It's just an all-around great, fine, detailed ballpoint pen. So if you're looking for a good ballpoint, try that out. I like to use a acrylic clear coat spray before I put down the varnish, because I have just done varnish before and it smeared a lot of my fine lines. So now I always spray a clear coat first. And for varnish, I typically just use a polyacrylic urethane. At the very bottom where his spine is, you can see a spot I missed, but I went through later and smoothed it out, so no worries, I got it. All right, there you have it. We are all finished. We just finished the varnish. It is dry and I peeled the tape off, so it's ready for the grand reveal. And I won't waste any of your time, so here we go. Okay, so there we have it, everyone. Let me know in the comments below if you liked this content, if you want to see me make more skateboard decks in future videos. Hopefully it inspired you and maybe gave you some ideas to put towards your artwork. Well, until next time, stay creepy.